The night wind blew in my face. Somewhere far below, the sea was storming, leaving a salty taste on my tongue. I kept walking forward, at times plunging back into my viscous thoughts, then desperately emerging from them for a breath of fresh air. To leave, to run away, to get lost, to forget. Not to trip over a stone on the road or get tangled in the heather. I walked almost all the way to the coast, arriving at Cape Manor to the sound of crickets. My legs ached and burned, but it was better than lying there staring at the ceiling for 3 days. 3 days. 3 days that I hadn't even noticed. Staring at the ceiling, staring at the wall, staring at the common room window overlooking Black Lake, at that murky cold water washing over the dungeons, never giving them a chance to warm up, going to classes, eating, probably eating. I was doing something, but if anyone asked me about it, I'd be lost. My head became a piercing flash of pain every time I returned to that thought, when I tried to make something, when I was trying to find the answer to the seemingly simple question, how do I feel about it? How should I feel about it? I had to surface from under the pressure of arguments and contradictions. It was starting to rain, all signs telling it would soon turn into a downpour, or even into a real storm. The first lightning flashed far above the sea. The wind whipped weeds across my face. And the harder the water drops hit my cheeks, the more I realized the horror of the situation. Night, empty coast, thunderstorm, high ground. I'm alone. And I was way too far from cozy Hogwarts. It was too late to get my sky scythe out. I couldn't get on a broom in this wind. At best, I'd be blown out to sea. I had to find shelter, anything, and fast. I was still empty, not scared, not cold, not anything. And it was as if my body had taken control instead of me, obeying some instinctive fear of thunder. My muscles refused to turn back and run to the nearest village, so I was moving forward towards the abandoned mansion. It wasn't the best choice, but I didn't have any other. Oh, those stone walls were not in their best condition. To be honest, they were all that was left of the once luxurious manor with its park and sculptures. The roof was almost non-existent, letting in frequent raindrops. Water ran down the exposed rafters, falling on the fragments of parquet flooring and protruding ceilings. This skeleton of wood and stone was rattling its bones. I didn't want to get hit over the head with a board. All I wanted to do was howl with shallow trembling and hopelessness. Until I found a basement. A cellar untouched by time with a grate of moonlight. Not a cozy country house with a fireplace, of course, but it was better than nothing. At least the lightning wouldn't get me there. As I was walking down the stone steps, I cast a disillusionment charm on myself. My favorite, my comfortable one. Like the best clothes, like a second skin. It had saved me hundreds of times, allowing me to even slip past a mountain troll. But not past the Inferi. Not the Inferi. Of course, why wouldn't the Inferi be here? What did I even expect from a gloomy, abandoned manor? Are they guarding something, or are they mere leftovers from previous owners? Who lived here? A dark wizard or something? My thoughts were sluggish and detached, as if it wasn't me who was standing in the creepy ruins of the basement. Like a moving picture in a Defense Against the Dark Arts textbook, showing me what kind of trouble I should avoid. Stupid, stupid situation. Stupid, stupid death. The dead slowly crawled toward me from 3 directions, but at some point I snapped out of it and reacted. Incendio! A pungent, nauseating odor hit me in the face. It filled the confined space of the basement, lit by the fire of the spell. Worse than suffocation, worse than thick and acrid smoke, the smell of burning bones. I frantically covered my nose with my wet sleeve, but it was too late. The smell had already slipped inside and reached my brain. With each breath, my thoughts drifted back to where I'd last smelled it. The place where everything had happened. 3 days ago. Sebastian was standing in the middle of the hall, surrounded by 3 inferi, as if the dead were his bodyguards. Was it Sebastian? It was hard to tell. He looked like the same guy with the large freckles and wild brown hair, whom we'd taken herbology together and sneaked into the library at night with. We'd share an apple and work out my problems. But his main problem wasn't getting sorted. And the further we got, the less I got to know him. The man standing in front of me now, I didn't know at all.
I told you so! The relic is the answer. I'm going to reverse the dark magic, undo the curse on Anne, and it allows me to control everything.
His face, once both affectionate and caustic, was now utterly cold and detached. His fists clenched as dark power was splashing silently and colourlessly in his gaze. Oh, Anne. Anne Sallow. His twin sister, cursed last spring. He was dead serious when he said he'd do anything to save her. There it was, all in the shape of a pyramid resting in his hand. And it was what brought us there, to the catacombs of Feldcroft. A circular hall in the middle of the tombs. Control! I fought them off all the way to you, Sebastian. It's too much. Are you even sure?
What have the two of you done? Accio relic!
A moment. A second not to realize, not to react. The relic was in the hands of Sebastian's uncle, Solomon Sallow, and the ex-Auror, professionally and quickly, in one move, destroyed it, along with all of Sebastian's hopes, along with a whole year of searching, and Sebastian attacked him.
Confringo!
Protego!
The inferi, bereft of control, thrust their bony arms in all directions. It was a hard, dirty fight. Solomon Sallow was shooting at Sebastian and me at the same time. I had no choice but to defend myself. I yelled something, but no one was listening.
She cannot be healed, Sebastian! You must stop!
I won't let her suffer! Avada Kedavra!
A green flash struck Solomon Sallow. His body fell to the stone floor. Sebastian Sallow killed his own uncle, his only guardian. The rain outside kept pounding. The wind was pulling away from the sea as the grey smoke came out through the grate on the ceiling, taking all the smells with it. I was lying on the floor in a dilapidated basement somewhere far, far away from Hogwarts, waiting for the storm to finally ease off so I could get back to the castle on my broom. I'd been walking all day. My legs refused to stand or even sit, and I could only lie there, stretching them forward. I ran so far away from the castle, from the Slytherin common room where I might accidentally run into Sebastian, from any things that would somehow remind me of him, away from my own thoughts, and all of it was only for me to stumble upon them again here. How ironic. The rain was going from heavy to medium, a good sign. It meant I could go back soon. All at once, as if in an instant I could feel the hardness of the floor with my back and the cold draft with my fingertips. I stood up and started to light the torches on the walls to make it brighter and warmer. At least a little. I dried my robe with a spell, untangled and tied my white hair into a high ponytail. I sat on the stone floor for an unknown amount of time, trying to get warm and listening to the rain. The cellar was very large and spacious, with cobwebs, soot, empty boxes, and wine barrels. I walked around it in a circle, looking around. A clap of apparition, black and purple smoke, and there she was. Ashwinder. Who else could show up like that? Wouldn't be the first time. I'm not afraid of you. Some old witch from Victor Rookwood's gang who seemed to be waiting for me here on purpose. Depulso!
Protego!
Flipendo! Protego! The body moved on its own, remembering every skirmish I'd had over this endless year. All it could take was not leaving Hogwarts today. Just should have stayed in the castle, and this would all finally be over. Not here, not with me. It can't be true. For some reason, I couldn't just knock her out and run away like I usually did. Always. It hurt. A lot of pain and heaviness. Not physical, though, no. And then the first emotion of the day hit me. Curiosity. A strange, dark curiosity. The kind that pushes you to the edge of the roof and makes you stare down, mesmerized. I knew 2 unforgivables, but I'd never used them. Sebastian had taught me. Who else would have? He said they were a tool that one shouldn't ignore, especially me with my problems. I believed him when he said they could come in handy, save lives, help me find answers. And maybe they could. I fended off the curse, flying at me with a quick shield, and gathered all my will into a fist. The pain, the heaviness, despair, fatigue, failing muscles, the smell of burning bones, thoughts drifting back to the catacombs, ambushed, caught up, despise, hate.
Crucio!
Time stopped. A gear hit another gear and could not move. The coil spring absorbed the impulse and would not return it. The clock stopped. The heartbeat in my ears didn't. There it is! This is it! Now! Pandora's box. The point after which there is no going back. After which the soul fractures and never comes back together again, leaving pain forever, like a protruding rib from a skull. The truth. It didn't work. It didn't work for me. For a second that lasted an eternity, the witch stood staring ahead with her black eyes. She shifted her gaze to her hand, which trembled for a mere second, then back to me. Her face started to change. She realized. But before her face curled into a fierce grin, I turned her into a barrel, anything to avoid looking her in the eye. That's how I left her in the basement, among dozens of other barrels, slamming her against the wall with medium force, to be sure. It's kind of weird. Me, Trollslayer and the hero of the Goblin Rebellion, didn't want to hurt anyone. That was news to me. Once outside the ruins, under the bright moonlight, I fell to my knees in exhaustion and looked up at the stars. The rain had ended, leaving behind only sparse, jagged clouds, seeming to part in different directions in front of me. The pure radiance of the northern constellations unfolded above my head, twinkling and shimmering, distant, cold, eternal. And that's when it caught up with me, a feeling that's bigger than me, like I'd been hit over the head with a board after all. It's like I'm 9 years old again, and my squib guardian is taking me to the Muggle side to the shooting range. The first shot is easy. You just pull the trigger. The whole place fills with smoke and rumble. And the second time, your body's afraid. It doesn't want the recoil and the gunpowder and the noise, but you can get over it and concentrate. You have to concentrate and pull the trigger again, showing the art of self-control. And then it can be honed over the years. It's the same with magic. You can shrink down and fire a bombard at a living person. The main thing is to keep your hands steady. A wand, like a gun, will do the job. But the unforgivables are different. It's like cutting a person with a knife into little pieces while they resist, cry and scream, tie them up and then gut them alive, and all those sensations in 1 second of the spell. Either you have to be a sadist or you must not care. Utterly, crystally don't care. And the ugly truth is, that's even worse. More dangerous than the violent urge, worse than the loudest rage. Indifference. And it seemed like it was winter again, and once again the three of us were standing at the door of the scriptorium trapped, and the door only opened with a pulse of Crucio. There was no other way out. Either do it or stay there forever. Discussion. Decision.
Crucio!
Sebastian didn't hesitate to put it on me. Crystal. Clear. He did save the three of us that day, but he was capable of casting it. He could. And it was scary. If he was capable of doing it at his 15, what would happen next? Merlin. For all of magical Britain, for the whole magical world, I liked the old you. Freckled Seb, sneaky and smelling of apples. You taught me the disillusionment charm. You've been with me on my search. You've covered and protected me. But this is more than I can comprehend. I slumped to the wet ground and sank my cold fingers into the grass. I'm sorry, Sebastian Sallow.
I don't want to lose Sebastian, but I don't think we have a choice.
We stood alone in the shadows of the secret room, the Undercroft. I returned to Hogwarts an hour ago and drank a lot of hot rose-hip tea. only it wouldn't help me anymore, neither to warm up nor to calm down. We stood and decided the fate of our friend. Ominis' best friend. At least he had been for many years, until now. And perhaps my best friend. At least I'd never had anyone closer that year at Hogwarts. Until today. No one wanted this. We both tried our best to stop it all that year, but no. And Anne was very clear in her letter. She refused the help of dark magic from the very beginning. Yes, he was her beloved brother. She would be in a lot of pain, but he had to answer for what he had done. We don't have a choice. You're right. You were right the entire time.
I wish I hadn't been. If we do this, we may never see Sebastian again.
I realize that. But it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Is it right? Is what right? Do I have the right to decide such things? Time clicked, marking that moment. In one brief instant, the whole world changed, and history itself seemed to take a different turn. It seemed that the new chronicle should start from this day, from this moment, and there was no other way. As I was about to leave, I turned to Ominis and looked into his pale face. His fair strands, always combed back, revealed a lowered brow and pain-filled, unseeing eyes. It was as if all my emotions came flooding back to me at once, and suddenly, I was crying. Always tough and strong, now I was completely broken, and as much as I wanted to hold on, I couldn't stop it. He and I weren't close, no, not that close, and a lot of what happened was my fault too. I didn't protect him. I didn't stop him. And it was Ominis who was suffering now. He had to be the one to turn in his best friend to the authorities now, not me. But the tears were already pouring down like today's mad rain. I rushed to him and wrapped my arms around his neck, clinging tightly, desperately, grabbing onto him like a lifeline, like he was the only one who could get me out. Because only he knew everything. We stood there in the dark, hugging,